34-10. That's the final score from Chicago. And before you even think about closing this tab because you think this is just another preseason loss breakdown, stop. Because that number on the scoreboard is almost completely meaningless. What is not meaningless, what actually matters, what you need to sit down and pay close attention to, is everything that happened inside that game. Specifically, what happened with the two men fighting for the most important job in Cleveland right now. The quarterback competition between Deshaun Watson and Shedeur Sanders just got its first real test. Live bullets, a real opponent, pads that actually hit back. And what each of these guys did with their opportunity today tells us more than 2 weeks of camp reports ever could. So forget the final score. We're going inside the game. Let's start with Deshaun Watson, because he got the bigger opportunity, the entire first half as the de facto starting quarterback. And if you just pulled up the box score and moved on with your day, you'd probably think everything went fine. 11 completions on 15 attempts, 126 yards, 0 touchdowns, but also 0 interceptions, a 98 quarterback rating, 4 rushing yards sprinkled in. On paper, that's a clean, competent performance from a guy who needed to look like a legitimate NFL starter. But here's the thing about box scores. They're designed to hide the truth. And on this particular day, the truth is a lot more complicated than that tidy little stat line suggests. Early in that first half, Watson genuinely looked like himself. Not the electric, pre-injury version of himself that had Houston buzzing years ago, but a functional, efficient, capable NFL quarterback moving an offense down the field. He was hitting his checkdowns on time, converting third downs that lesser quarterbacks leave on the field, and keeping drives alive in ways that actually matter when you're trying to win football games in September. There was one stretch in particular, a touchdown drive where Casey Kumsin absolutely flashed why this front office was so excited to bring him in, where the whole offense just clicked. Kumsin took a play into the end zone, stayed on his feet through contact, finished the run with balance and determination, and for a few minutes there, you started to believe that maybe this offense had something real brewing. Watson was operating with rhythm, the ball was coming out on time, the line was holding up, and if you were watching without any context, without any memory of everything that has happened with this quarterback over the last few years, you might have felt genuinely good about what you were seeing. And then it all unraveled in about 10 seconds. Late in the first half, Watson took a hit, lost the football on 4th down, and handed possession directly back to the Bears. A strip sack. Clean, undeniable, costly. And look, fumbles happen in football. Every quarterback, every starter, every elite player in the history of this league has lost the ball at some point. That part isn't the problem by itself. The problem is what comes with it, a pattern that has quietly followed Watson ever since he arrived in Cleveland. He's admitted himself, on the record, that his mental approach to the game wasn't in a good place when he first got here. That's not me editorializing, those are his own words, and while he's talked about being in a better headspace now, what you still see when things go sideways for him in a live game is a quarterback who struggles to just flush it and move on. There's a hesitation, a weight that seems to settle onto his shoulders the moment something goes wrong. And in the NFL, the quarterbacks who survive long-term are exactly the ones who can shake off a bad play in about 3 seconds and come back to the line ready to execute the next one like nothing happened. That reset speed is an open question with Watson. It showed up again today, and it's going to keep showing up as a concern until he proves otherwise over a sustained stretch of real football. But here's the number that actually tells the complete story of Deshaun's first half, and it comes straight from ESPN's tracking data on pressure versus a clean pocket. When Watson had time to stand in the pocket and operate without a defender breathing on him, he was 9 for 11 for 109 yards with a 108 quarterback rating. That is genuinely excellent football. No qualifications, no asterisks. That's a starting quarterback performing at a high level and giving his team a real chance to move the ball.
Now, here's the other side of that split. The moment pressure arrived, Watson went 2 of 4 for 17 yards and a 61 quarterback rating. 17 yards. That's not a small dip in performance. That's not the natural variance you see from any quarterback when the pocket gets disrupted. That is a cliff, a full collapse in efficiency the second the conditions stopped being ideal. And when you're talking about playing in the AFC, in a division with real pass rushers, in a league where no offensive line in football provides a clean pocket on every single snap, that gap is a massive, flashing red warning sign. It also puts the entire offensive line conversation front and center in a way that can't be ignored. Because here's the reality. It doesn't matter whether Watson or Shedeur ultimately wins this job. If that offensive line can't protect whoever is back there, neither of them is going to succeed. The protection question isn't a subplot in this story, it's the main event. And today's pressure split just put that in neon lights. When Shedeur Sanders finally trotted out onto that field for the third quarter, the energy shifted. You could feel it even through the broadcast. This was the moment the entire camp conversation had been building toward. Not another practice rep against Cleveland's own defense, not another controlled walkthrough, but live football against a real opponent with real consequences. And his first play? A strike. A clean, confident, on-time throw to Gage Laradane for a gain of over 20 yards. First play. No hesitation, no happy feet, no checking down to the safe option when the bigger play was there. He saw it, he trusted it, he threw it. Then, on the same drive, he dropped a ball down the field, 35 yards in the air, right into the hands of Luke Floria. Accurate, with anticipation, pushing the ball deep with the kind of arm confidence that you simply cannot teach a quarterback who doesn't already have it. For those two plays, everything the scouts had been saying about Shedeur all camp felt completely validated. The quick release, the accuracy on intermediate and deep routes, the ability to read a defense and get the ball to the right spot before the window closes, that's exactly the version of Shedeur Sanders that make people believe he should be the starter in Cleveland right now. And in those moments, it was impossible to argue against it. He looked like a guy who belonged, not a rookie trying to survive. A quarterback trying to win. But this channel doesn't do selective analysis. We don't show you the highlights and quietly skip past the lowlights. So here's the full picture. Shedeur threw a bad interception. Not a tough luck pick where a defender made an incredible play, not a ball that tipped off a receiver's hands. A genuine, this should not have happened interception on a throw to Malachi Klee that was a poor decision and a poor execution at the same time. The ball was overthrown, the read was questionable, and it's exactly the kind of mistake that a quarterback fighting for a starting job cannot afford to make when his sample size is only 1/4 of preseason football. There's also a trend worth flagging that has followed Shedeur through his early career. Balls getting batted down at the line of scrimmage. It happened again today, more than once. Now, there are a few different explanations for why that happens to a quarterback with more frequency than you'd like to see. Release point, pocket movement, or lack of it, just circumstance and bad luck sometimes. But when it keeps showing up across different games, different situations, different opponents, it stops being coincidence and starts being a pattern that deserves real attention. That's not a death sentence for his candidacy, it's just something that has to be acknowledged honestly and watched closely going forward. His final line for the day, 6 completions on 11 attempts, 79 yards, 1 interception. On a single quarter of preseason work against a Bears defense that wasn't exactly the 85 Bears out there. That line doesn't confirm anything definitive in either direction. It doesn't prove he's ready to be the Week 1 starter, and it doesn't prove he isn't. What it gives us is exactly what preseason Week 1 is supposed to give us, a starting point for the conversation, not the end of it.
Before we move off the quarterback room entirely, Dillon Gabriel needs his own moment here, because it's easy to just write third-string quarterback, moving on, and skip past what he actually showed us today. His final line was 5 of 8 for 23 yards with an interception, and it was a bad one. Not a close call, not a coverage breakdown that put him in a tough spot, a genuine mistake that confirmed exactly what camp had already been telling us about his limitations. Gabriel is comfortable, efficient, and reliable when he's working underneath. Short throws, quick rhythm, controlled situations where the ball gets out fast and the risk is minimal. He does that part of the job about as well as you could ask a third-string quarterback to do it. But the moment he tries to push the ball past that comfortable range and attack a defense down the field, the results deteriorate fast. Today's interception was a direct extension of that limitation showing up under live conditions for the first time. It wasn't surprising, but confirmation in a real game hits differently than what you see on a practice field. Here's the thing though, Gabriel's value to this roster isn't built on winning the starting job. Nobody serious is arguing that he should. His value is built on being the guy who can come in cold off the bench in the middle of a game, manage a short drive without costing his team points, and hand the ball back to the offense without creating chaos. That's a genuinely underrated skill in the NFL. Teams that have reliable, steady depth at quarterback, guys who won't panic, won't force it, won't try to do more than their job requires, navigate the inevitable injuries and disruptions of a full season far better than teams who don't. Gabriel fits that profile almost perfectly. The ceiling concern is real, and it's valid, but for a team that wanted organic competition and genuine depth heading into this season, having him in that room isn't a problem, it's insurance. There was also a small flash of mobility from Gabriel today that's worth noting in the context of what Todd Monken is building on this offense. He clearly wants quarterbacks who can extend plays with their legs, create outside of structure when the designed play breaks down, and use athleticism as a weapon rather than just a last resort. Gabriel showed a glimpse of that element today. It won't change his roster outlook in any dramatic way, but it tells you something about what the coaching staff values in every quarterback they're evaluating, and it makes even the third-string evaluation feel intentional rather than perfunctory. Here's the part of today's game that doesn't get nearly enough attention when the quarterback conversation dominates the whole narrative. The receiver room looked genuinely dangerous when the starters were on the field together. Casey Coomson had a real debut. 3 catches, 27 yards, and that touchdown run where he showed exactly the kind of yards after contact ability that had evaluators excited about him coming out of college. One of the biggest questions surrounding Coomson entering this season was whether the drop concerns and ball security questions from his college tape would follow him into the NFL. Today was a direct answer to that. Strong hands, good balance through contact, the ability to make a play and then keep making the play after the initial hit. If that carries over into the regular season, this offense has a real weapon that can create in a lot of different ways. Not just as a receiver on the perimeter, but as someone who can contribute in the run game and in space. Denzel Boston flashed in his own right, hauling in a 15-yard reception while the starting group was out there. Jerry Jeudy got involved as well, connecting with Watson for 2 catches and 18 yards that showed the kind of smooth route running and reliable hands that made Cleveland pursue him in the first place. What the starting receiver group showed today, on the limited snaps they actually shared together, is that this unit has real versatility. Speed, size at the catch point, ability to create after the catch, different players who stress a defense in completely different ways.
Whoever wins this quarterback competition, and I still believe it should be Shedeur, is not walking into an empty cupboard. He's inheriting a genuinely talented group of weapons that can make his job significantly easier if the offense is structured correctly around what they do best. And on the other side of the ball, undrafted rookie running back Devin Booth gave this front office something to think about, with 53 yards on just 4 carries. That's not a small sample coincidence. That's burst, vision, patience behind blockers, and the kind of performance that forces a coaching staff to take a longer, harder look at a guy who otherwise might have been easy to overlook when final roster cuts arrive. Booth's put himself firmly into the conversation today, and in a running back room that's going to need real depth behind the starters over the grind of a full season, that matters. Now let's talk about the part of today's game that deserves its own full conversation and isn't getting it because the quarterback drama is eating all the oxygen in the room. The defense gave up 34 points to the Chicago Bears in a game where the Bears were leaning heavily on backups for most of the second half. 2 touchdowns, and 151 yards on just 10 passing attempts by a journeyman quarterback getting extended run against Cleveland's secondary. Even accounting for the fact that this is preseason, even accounting for the fact that starters were rotating out early, even accounting for all the usual context that softens these numbers, that is genuinely alarming. A defense playing mostly backups should not be getting torched by a backup quarterback to that degree, and the cornerback depth situation is the core reason why. This front office has been signing corner after corner throughout August. That's not a coincidence, and it's not just standard roster shuffling. When a personnel department is making that many moves at a single position in the middle of the preseason, it means they looked at what they had and decided it wasn't good enough. Today only confirmed that read. Outside of the top 2 or 3 names in that cornerback room, there simply isn't proven depth, and one of their better cover corners didn't even play in this game, which only made a thin secondary look even thinner against a Bears passing attack that had its way for entire stretches of this game. But here's the part of this defensive story that actually connects back to the quarterback competition in a way that people don't always think about. A defense that can't get off the field puts direct pressure on whichever quarterback is standing behind center. It forces him to play from behind. It forces him to force throws into tighter windows against defenses that are now playing with the lead. It creates exactly the kind of high-pressure, everything-has-to-go-right situations. Watson's pressure struggles, Gabriel's deep ball limitations, even Shedeur's tendency toward the occasional high-risk decision. A leaky defense doesn't just cost points on its own side of the ball, it's a ripple effect across the entire roster, and that's one more reason why turnover avoidance has to be weighted heavily in how this coaching staff ultimately makes their decision at quarterback. The value of a clean, careful quarterback extends well beyond his individual stat line. It shows up in the fourth quarter, in the secondary, in the scoreboard at the end of games that come down to a possession or two. One more layer to today's game that deserves a mention before we wrap up the full picture. Former Cleveland quarterback Case Keenum was out there for the Bears, and he looked like the best quarterback on the entire field. 9 of 10 passing, 51 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a perfect quarterback rating. A literal perfect day from a veteran backup who knows exactly what his role is and executes it without drama, without mistakes, and without costing his team anything.
Nobody is seriously suggesting Cleveland should go bring Keenum back. That conversation is over before it starts. But credit where it's due, the man balled out today, and watching a veteran presence operate with that kind of calm efficiency is a useful reminder of what a quarterback who fully understands his role actually looks like in practice. There was also a receiver on the Bears sideline today who Browns fans with a long preseason memory will recognize, a player who caught 2 touchdown passes from Shedeur Sanders in preseason action last year. Now suiting up for Chicago, put up 88 receiving yards against Cleveland's defense. Preseason storylines have a funny way of coming full circle, and that one is too perfect not to mention. Here's where we actually stand after everything we watched today, with no spin and no wishful thinking. The quarterback competition is not settled, not even close. Nobody who watched this game got the clean, this changes everything performance they were hoping for, because it didn't happen. Watson was efficient in ideal conditions and fell apart the moment pressure arrived, capped by a turnover that confirmed a mental reset pattern that has to resolve itself before anyone can trust him as a long-term answer. Shedeur showed exactly the kind of arm talent and competitive confidence that makes you believe he should be the starter, and then threw an interception that reminded everyone this is still a work in progress. Gabriel confirmed his ceiling and his floor simultaneously, and both of them landed exactly where camp had suggested they would. What did become clear is that the pieces surrounding whoever wins this job are genuinely good. The receiver room has real weapons, the running back depth has a new name worth watching, and the coaching staff is structuring these preseason opportunities deliberately, giving Watson a full half to expose how he handles sustained pressure, planning a full half for Shedeur next week to get a cleaner read on where he actually is, rather than just going through the motions. Next week is the real window, A full half of Shedeur Sanders, extended run, real scheme, real pressure, real evaluation stakes. That game is going to tell us significantly more than anything we saw today. And when it happens, this channel will be right here breaking down every single series the moment it ends. One preseason game is a data point. The verdict comes later, and right now the only honest thing anyone can say about this quarterback competition is that it's exactly as unresolved, as fascinating, and as important as it was before the first snap was ever taken in Chicago. Stay tuned. It's only getting more interesting from here.